Today I'm looking at more of Isaiah. And again, I like the idea, and I've said this before, of looking at it as YouTubes, as broken up ideas. And so we finished up 10 through 12, which is one big long idea. We have 13 and 14, which are one idea. In 15, we start talking about Moab, and that goes through 16. 17, we start talking about Damascus. So God is telling Isaiah about different geographical areas because he's going to judge all of them. And so here he spends the first part of it dealing with Israel mostly, but he also is now starting to deal with Babylon. And so Babylon will come up in play later. So we see that God has talked about Assyria. He's talked about Israel. Now he's going to talk about Babylon. We're also going to talk about Moab and Edom, and we're going to talk about Egypt and Ethiopia, because God is going to judge the nations. He's a just God. If he's let all these nations do what they wanted because Israel was doing what it wanted. So it's kind of like, I can't really stump on them till I justly deal with the main one and then break it down. I owe it to the main person I'm getting on to also get the others. It's kind of like, someone who stole 4 pieces of candy and someone stole 8. Well, if you're trying to get the 8 piece to repent and change, you kind of have to ignore the 4 pieces. Those that took 4 pieces. But if you go and now you judge the 4 pieces, the 8 piece for what they did, now you got to go after the others. You get the idea. That's how the judgment of God works. When he starts judging, he is honor bound to judge everybody. That is one of the reasons why we're waiting on the justice of God. That is why he's going to judge in the future. But he says he will judge the whole world because we're all sinners. So we deal with 13, the burden of Babylon. Once again, the idea of burden. The burden means something you're going to have to bear. Babylon, this is something you're going to have to bear. Now, he didn't choose for them to be this type of person. Very prideful, very arrogant, look what I've done. In fact, when we get to 14, we're dealing with a lot of stuff where Babylon has gotten so bad that it's mirroring what Lucifer did in heaven. So he goes ahead, when he compares him to Lucifer, if I were to say that this person in another country is acting like Hitler, you get the idea. And some of their similarities might show about, here's what you're doing is very similar to what Hitler did. It's not a complete typology, but it's enough to show definite characteristics. In 14, we'll learn about how Babylon is a lot like Lucifer, and we get an idea about the parallel. The fall of Lucifer, the fall of Babylon, and the fall of the mystery Babylon, which is going to happen, are all typologies of one another. So we see the burden of Babylon. We don't know when this was written. We 100% do not know if these were written in any kind of order. In fact, it could be that he wrote to Babylon, then wrote to Moab, but Moab's wrath, the wrath on Moab happened first. So the idea that he's giving this litness doesn't mean that what happens is going to fall there. It could be that Moab got their just judgment before Babylon, and Babylon would get theirs eventually. When we're looking at Babylon, we're looking at the fact that they didn't get their judgment for maybe even over 100 years from now, but it would happen. And then, of course, the mystery Babylon has been over 2,000 years since then, more like 2,400 years. But that's okay with God. He's given us all the information we need. Now, like I said, he may have hit Moab before he hit Babylon, but told us about Babylon first. So, these technical things we shouldn't get too caught up in. Lift up the banner upon the high mountain, exalt the voice of them, shake the hands, and that they may go into the gates of the nobles. I have commanded my sanctified ones. I have also called my mighty men for thine anger, even them that rejoice in my highness. The voice of the multitude and the nations is like that of a great people. He's describing Babylon. Howl ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It has come as a destruction from the Almighty. He talks about who they are in 2 and 3. They are lifted up. They're a big and a mighty people, but God's judgment shall come upon them. Therefore shall all hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt. We begin talking about how mighty they think they are and how wonderful. But when the Lord's visitation comes, it will melt, and they will be afraid. Pangs of sorrows will come upon them. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel, both the wrath and fierce anger to lay the land desolate. He will destroy the sinners therein, for the stars of the heaven and the constellations shall not give their light, and the sun shall be darkened. We see these patterns. Jesus even mentioned these things. When we see these patterns of judgment, they're pretty similar, and they probably even happened to Sodom and Gomorrah in some way, or into all these other places where God judged and moved against the culture. Probably similar things. They're patterns. God doesn't move without giving us patterns so we can see what's happening and see that it's him and that he's just in doing it. So here we have, I will punish the world for their evil. Now, at that time, we're talking about the world in general, the world around there, but he's also saying parenthetically, I will judge the whole entire world for their sin, as the wicked and for the iniquity, when I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease. I will make a man more precious than gold. You're not going to be able to find men. Men are going to be more precious than gold if you can find a man. Therefore, I will shake the heavens and the earth and remove out of her place in the wrath of the Lord of hosts. Behold, I stir up the Medes against them, which will not regard silver or for gold. They shall not delight in it. They shall not delight in it. Their bows shall dash the young men into pieces, and they shall have no pity to the fruit of the womb. Their eyes will not spare the children. There's even a scripture here that talks about dashing the children to pieces. And it sounds horribly cruel. We've been through this before when we dealt with God being just to a people by giving them how they treated the nations around them. And I always remember that king, I think it was in Judges, where he had his thumbs and his big toe cut off. And he said, well, it's just, I did that to 10 kings. Dashing their kids is what these people had done to the ones around them, and now it's happening to them. So he doesn't just come in and just violently do these things and be wild about it. He's not. He's precise. Here's how you treated the nations around you. You wiped them like a plate, I'm going to wipe you like a plate. You showed no mercy to their children, I'll show no mercy to your children. You dashed their kids to pieces, I'll dash yours. Oh, God's doing that. Well, it's justice. And so and Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees actually shall it be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. And by the way, Sodom and Gomorrah were overthrown by God. That's something that LGBT question mark and all these alphabet people forget. And it shall be neither inhabited. So he's talking against Babylon here. But the Lord will have mercy on Jacob. Here we go. We're flipping a switch a little bit. Babylon, really, they may have in a larger area done horrible things in the face of Jehovah. But Jacob did worse. And yet he's forgiving Jacob because of the promise that he made to Abraham and to David. And he says, I will yet choose Israel. Once again, that's Zechariah 1:17 is going to pick up on that. And that will be further down the line. Remember, that's coming after Zerubbabel and after Joshua, the resetting up, the rebuilding of the temple. But here he is 100 years before it's even destroyed. We have this where he's saying, but I will choose Israel and set them in their own land, and strangers shall be joined unto them, and the people shall take them and bring them to their place. And for the Lord shall give the strangers as possessions of servants and handmaids, and they shall take their captives, and whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. So the ones that oppressed them will now become their servants. The ones who stood over them will now serve them. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall give rest from thy sorrow, talking to Jacob. And again, we're talking to Jacob the trickster. You know, when it uses Israel and Jacob, it isn't just he picked a name, you know. He's talking to the trickster, but I've brought you back. To Israel, you know, the prince, the chosen prince, before the people, the nation that I've chosen. But also I'm talking to the heart, the sinful heart, which is Jacob. The Lord has broken the staff of the wicked. He has smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke. The whole earth is at rest and quiet, and they break forth with singing. Yea, the fir trees break forth and rejoice. Hell beneath has moved for thee to meet thee in thy coming. It has stirred up the dead in thee. Here it's an interesting something we don't talk about, how hell will even come up to meet in the second coming when Yeshua comes, when Yahweh comes, who's Jesus. When he comes back, that even hell will come up. But it's interesting you get this discussion in hell, where it seems like the people in hell meet Babylon and go, you're not so great. You're not so great. He goes, and they will say to thee, art thou, which have become as weak as we are? Art thou become like us? Their pomp is brought down to the graves, and the noise of their vowels, the worm is spread under thee. The worms will cover thee, how they are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. Here, like I said earlier, is we're getting a parallel. What happens to Babylon is similar to what, very similar, if not again, a typology of what Lucifer did in heaven. How Babylon was cast down, and cast down will low. This is exactly like Lucifer was cast down and made low. So we're dealing with both a historical truth and a spiritual typology at the same time. He's telling like two stories at one time. For thou hast said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit upon the mount of congregation at the sides of the north, and I will ascend into the heights of the clouds, and I will be like the Most High. This is what Babylon had said. This is what Lucifer had said, and they both got cast down similarly. They shall see thee, narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth tremble, and that shook the kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities? When they see the great of Babylon coming and broken down and dropped down into hell, they will say, is this it? Is this what made people afraid? Is this what made people shudder and what changed the earth? Same thing with Satan. Were you the one? Look at this guy. And you're the one? You really caused all this? There's going to be a bit of incredulousness going on. All the kings of the nations, even all of them that lie in glory, each one of them in their own house. But thou will be cast out of the grave like an abominable branch, and the raiment of those that are slain. Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou will be removed out of the land. You won't even die in your own land, in a sense. You're going to get removed. When the Medes and Persians came in, they just took over and moved out. And that's what happened. Prepare the slaughter for thy children, for the iniquity of their fathers, they will not rise. And when it says the iniquity of the fathers, because the fathers sinned, all of this happened. We're not saying that the children are paying. The children are paying for their fathers did directly, but they're getting the consequences of what their fathers did. So it's different. It's like God would not be punishing me for something my dad did, but I bear the consequences if he comes down on him, and now I'm, disenfranchised. For I will rise up against them, says the Lord of hosts, and cut off from Babylon the name and the remnant, the son and the nephew. I'll also make it a possession of the Bittern and pools of water, and I will sweep it with the besom of destruction. He comes right out. I'm going to wipe this place clean. And that's what he did. And he says, I will break the Assyrian in their land, and upon my mountain tread him underfoot. This is what God's going to do. And so he says that in the year that King Ahaz died was this burden. Rejoice not, whole Palestina, because of the rod of him that smote thee is broken. For out of the serpent's root shall come forth a cockatrice, which is a more dangerous snake. And his fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent. If you thought Ahaz was bad on you, wait till you see his son. And who was his son be? Hezekiah. Hezekiah was really going to go against the idolatry. If you thought Ahaz was like, please stop, Hezekiah will be, you will stop. So we're going to see this happen in Philistines. And the firstborn of the poor shall feed, and the needy shall lie down in safety. And I will kill thy root with famine, and he shall slay thy remnant. This has happened to Philistinia. He's going to slay thy remnant. How, ye, O great, how, O gate, cry, O city, thou great Philistinia, art dissolved. For thou hast come from the north, for there have come from the north a smoke, and none shall be alone in his appointed times. What shall one then answer the messengers of the nations? That the Lord has founded Zion, and the poor of the people shall trust in it. So once again, we're ending this YouTube with this. What shall one then answer the messengers of the nations? then nations are going to send messengers to say, what is going on here? And the answer will be, the Lord has founded Zion, and poor of his people shall trust in it. So he's establishing Zion. That's going to be the answer. Why is all this happening? Why are you stirring this up? Why are you judging all these nations? Why are you putting down people? Why are you disenfranchising? Why are you putting down? Because Mount Zion is lifted up, and the poor of his people shall trust in it. So he's creating this beachhead moment. And so it's good. Once again, we've seen his YouTubes end with a good note. At least a couple of them have so far, you know. And so this one does end in YouTube. And YouTube ends in a good note. And so tomorrow we go on to the burden of Moab, which is a couple of chapters. I might be able to also get in the burden of Damascus. That's a couple of chapters. But yeah, we see him. He's doing these burdens that you're going to have to face this. This is going to happen because of your sin. So when we see God move in Isaiah, we can kind of look around and say, well, what's he doing in our world today? So it's interesting. We really need to read this now more than ever. Thank you.